Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. We all know that many Native American needs and concerns haven't been met by the government. Well, enter Stacey Montooth. The governor of Nevada appointed her the liaison between the state government and Native American tribes in Nevada. She's the executive director of the State of Nevada Indian Commission. Stacey's also a citizen of the Walker River Paiute Nation. She's here with me now. Welcome to American Voices, Stacey.
Thank you, Senator. It is an absolute pleasure.
Well, when the governor called, that must have been a proud moment.
It absolutely was. My office is actually located on the former Stewart Indian boarding school. This boarding school began in the late 1800s to forcefully assimilate my relatives into mainstream American society. And so here we are in 2021, and when I sit at my desk, I can actually look out the window and see the dormitories in which my grandmother grew up.
Tell us how that worked. Give us her story.
Like a lot of boarding school survivors, my grandmother was actually 4 years old, and that's not an unusual age in which representatives for the federal government literally kidnapped, in some cases tore children from their mother's arms and took them to faraway boarding schools that were operated by the federal government. The federal government had a motto, kill the Indian, save the man. And with that creed, over 150 boarding schools were operated through the country with this goal of removing anything Native American from these young people. Their hair was cut. They were forced to wear uniforms. I tell people often what my grandmother experienced at 4 years old is a lot like what young Americans volunteer for when they serve in the United States military. It literally was boot camp. Their whole day was punctuated by bells and whistles. They had to march everywhere. There was corporal punishment. The students weren't allowed to speak their traditional languages. And it was a very, very dark time in the United States history. And as you can imagine, when it came time for my grandmother to raise her children, her experience, especially with education, was that the federal government, they feed you, they clothe you, they teach you. She had no concept of homework or parent-teacher conferences, any of those things that nowadays we think of as the best practices in education. So our families, and this certainly is the case for mine, my mother is one of 10 children. My mother's whole generation didn't have a childhood that is really conducive to continuing, loving, affectionate, supportive family environment.
My name is Elisa Tom. I came to Stewart in 1959 on a bus on Wappi Indian Reservation. It was my first time away from the reservation, and I was 12 years old. I was at Stewart from 1959 to 1965. Upon arrival, I was checked in at the dorm and checked for bugs and sores in the lavatory, as they called it back then. I was then taken to my room and assigned a room. I was number 2 and had to use this number for roll call for lining up to march to the dining hall for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I remember as a little girl marching to the dining room, the bigger girls would call us termites. I'm not sure why. Maybe because we had to march in a line. They would say, "Here comes the termites, here comes the termites." Even my bed and dresser had the number 2 on it.
My name is Florence Miller. I was sent to Stewart in 1950 from the Duckwater Shoshone Reservation. I was only 12 years old, and it was the first time I had been away from my family and the reservation. I was very unhappy at Stewart, so lonely and homesick, really depressed. I tried running away 3 times, but was always caught and returned to Stewart. Each time I was punished. My long hair that I was so proud of was cut shorter and shorter. That really hurt me.
My grandmother, because she was raised in the boarding school, her opportunity to raise her 10 children in a loving, affectionate environment was stripped. She was raised in an institution and really had no reference for being a parent. And so it continued to my mother's generation. She was raised in a household that was violent and didn't have, positive physical affection.
Well, it's quite a contrast between your grandmother's experience and now here you are, the head of the Indian Commission in Nevada.
It really is remarkable, and I often reflect on the fact that the governor of Nevada has asked me to do exactly opposite of what the federal government tried to do to not just my grandmother, but we know at this campus there were over 200 different reservations represented. I can tell you there's not a Shoshone, a Paiute, or a Washoe people in this area who don't have a direct tie to the boarding school.
So tell me, what are you in charge of?
I serve as the liaison between our tribal nations and the governor. My office, which there's 2 of us, but we are charged with doing research and compiling reports to aid the governor as well as the Nevada legislature on policies regarding the quality of life for our Native American people. That is everything from navigating the public school system to ensuring that some of the food deserts have access to fresh fruit and vegetables, to operating our cultural center and museum. For instance, right now, school started yesterday in most of the public schools in Nevada. And so part of my responsibility is to ensure that our tribal leadership and our tribal Indian educators know about any of the policies that are the safety measures that are being implemented because of this worldwide pandemic we're enduring.
So what's the most frustrating part of the job?
Well, the most frustrating part of the job is there's not one foolproof, easy way to communicate with the approximately 70,000 Native Americans in this state. I know that at one point you were leading a charge for our relatives out in the Black Hills to get their land back. So I know that you understand the social ills that my relatives face.
Absolutely.
And that is directly connected not just to the boarding school era where we, had this just absolute intergenerational trauma take place. That experience with education is linked to the low outcomes that Native Americans have in high school. Right now in the state of Nevada, we have the highest dropout rate. We have the lowest matriculation rate. But one of the other ideas that the federal government had to deal with the Indian problem was to put our relatives in these remote, isolated areas. You let your audience know that I'm a citizen of the Walker River Paiute Nation. Well, my tribal land base is a good hour and a half by car from a major metropolitan area. we have no stable internet out there. And, one of the big issues is we can't always communicate quickly and efficiently. We don't have that kind of connection to some of our remote areas. We have 2 reservations that are so remote you cannot get to them without driving at least 50 miles on dirt roads. Not only are these roads not safe, the school buses can't get through, then our students miss class.
Well, so tell me, if you were going to make 2 or 3 changes in federal policy toward Native Americans, what would they be?
I think for most of my existence and my time in tribal government, I'm going to be 55 this month, I've always felt very, very strongly that education is the silver bullet, that it is the great equalizer. And if we could just get our students to be successful in schools, that would be a tremendous boost. And from what people way smarter than I have determined is that in addition to equal access and the state providing a quality education, we need Native American educators. We need classroom teachers. We need principals and basketball coaches. We need to have role models specifically in education who look like our students. So I never thought that this day would come, but in June, Governor Sisolak signed legislation. He signed his name and a bill became a law in the state of Nevada, which allows any Native American student from our region to attend a state college or university for free.
Wow, that's great.
It's historic. It's just such a triumph.
It's the law.
Yay!
Yes, long time coming there.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. That's something that could be done on a federal level.
Yeah, so how do you deal with getting equity in education and access to health care?
The first step is money. They actually pay more for incarcerated citizens than they do for Native Americans. So if I had a magic wand and I could do a quick change, the first thing I would do is to ensure that Uncle Sam fully funds all of our tribal health centers, all of our tribal clinics, and our urban Indian centers.
Mm-hmm. So are there any people that you've helped that you've been particularly proud of?
Oh, I had the privilege of meeting Daisy, and just amazing, dynamic, outgoing woman, always had a smile on her face. And at 18, Daisy actually got legal custody of her little brother, who at the time was just 6 years old. So all this time, I knew how hard Daisy worked. I knew that she was spending evenings and night classes because she wanted to get those formal credentials. But I didn't know of all of these immense responsibilities she had. When we were successful in getting the law passed for the tuition waiver, I had explained to her that we were going to have this historical event at the Stewart campus, at the place where the federal government wouldn't allow our students to learn their traditional lifestyles. We are going to have the governor of the state sign into law this tuition waiver. And I asked Daisy if she would bead some special pens for that occasion. It coincided with Daisy's little brother graduating from Sparks High School, and he was one of the first students to complete the form for the tuition waiver. And now, not only is Daisy's brother going to go to the University of Nevada, but Daisy is not going to have the financial burden, but she can actually have a little bit of a leg up because she can continue her night and evening classes without that huge tuition bill.
Oh, that's a great story. So you're helping people, but you also come in contact with people who are in pain. Do you ever find it difficult to cope?
Oh, I absolutely do. I've begun seeing a therapist. And I recommend that for everyone. I mean, this job can definitely be overwhelming, and you couple that with the pandemic.
Sounds to me like you're doing a great job, Stacey.
Well, I don't believe in coincidences. I think this is the Creator at work. I think He prepared me, and this is where I'm supposed to be.
Well, I know a lot of people benefit from you being where you are. Thanks for being here on American Voices and for all you do.
It was an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and I want to take time to thank you not only for your years and years of service to all of America, but you have taken a lot of time to be intimately involved with our tribal nations and our environment, and that's just so important. So thank you very, very much.
Well, double thank you to you, Stacey. Thanks. I've been speaking with Stacey Montooth. She's the Executive Director of the State of Nevada Indian Commission. Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.